Boys, it's your favorite casual here at Listen. Took the SAT this morning. That did not go well. Had to guess a few times on the math section. Started freestyling a bit, if you know what I mean. But that's all right, because we got a lot to talk about today. UFC 309 is the worst card of the year. Probably the worst card I've ever seen. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about some of the fights on this card and also make some early fight predictions. So starting off, first fight of the prelims, Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. I'm gonna be honest, I've never heard of Damon Jackson before, but Jim Miller, get out of the cage, bro. This guy's been fighting for 40 years. He is, let's see, he's 37 and 18 in the UFC. If we go to his UFC stats here, this is the longest resume I've ever seen, but he's actually got some good wins on here. Okay, he beat Charles Oliveira back in the day before Charles went on that big run. But like he's got some big names on here. He lost to Dustin Poirier, beat Donald Cerrone. So he is a good fighter. He's just so old. He should have retired 5 years ago. I mean, this guy literally fought. He's the only fighter to ever fight at UFC 100, UFC 200, and UFC 300. That's a real statistic. Uh, but I don't know. I mean, just looking at Damon Jackson's statistics here, he does have a height advantage, reach advantage. Looks like he's kind of longer in every single way. He is a featherweight, though. I don't know if this is right, but this says that he's a featherweight fighting at welterweight against Jim Miller. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I'm going to pick Jim Miller to win this just because I know who he is and he's more tested in the UFC, but I think this should be Jim Miller's retirement fight. I think he should have retired a long time ago. Let's move on. Next up on the card, we have Nikita Krylov versus Azamat. I'm actually very excited for this fight. I think Krylov's going to win a pretty dominant decision here. The UFC is doing this weird thing where they're putting the best fights, like headlining the prelims, and then putting worse fights on the main card. I don't know exactly what's up. Like at UFC 307, I went to Salt Lake City with my friend Jesse to watch those fights. They had Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Joaquin Buckley headlining the prelims. And then they had two WMMA fights on the main card. I don't know what was up with that. I'm not sure why Krylov is on the prelims when we have Chris Weidman in 2024 fighting on a main card. But I'm a big Krylov fan. I think he probably wins a dominant decision here. I think he's more tested. I think Azamat, he's undefeated, but he hasn't fought a very high competition in the UFC so far. I also just think Krylov is bigger than him, and I think he's more well rounded. So moving on to Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. This entire main card here would have been a great card if it had taken place 5 years ago. Okay. I mean, John Jones versus Stipe, that would be a banger in like 2020, 2019. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This was a great fight when it happened like 6 years ago. I don't even know who these people are. But anyway, talking about Chris Weidman, this guy should be retired. I'm not sure why he's on a main card. But to be honest, I'm not sure who wins this fight. It's a pretty even matchup to me. I think if I had to pick, I'd pick Chris Weidman, but I'm gonna talk more about that in my actual prediction video, which is coming up soon. Let's talk about Bo Nickel, my least favorite fighter in the UFC. All right, we got this guy, Ian Gary, probably my two least favorite people. Not even fighters, just my two least favorite people in the UFC. Okay, this guy's 6-0, and the UFC is treating him like fucking Jesus reborn, okay? They put him on the main card of UFC 300, the biggest fight card of all time. And now they're putting him on another main card over. I think Krylov versus Oz. I think this is a better fight than Bo Nickel. I don't know why we keep giving Bo Nickel a bunch of cans that he can beat up. I mean, Paul Craig's a great fighter, but I mean, the guy's kind of getting old now. I mean, this entire card is basically just retirement fights. I don't know what the UFC was thinking when they put this together. But I don't know why we keep giving Bo Nickel these easy layups, okay? I mean, in his fight at UFC 300, he was like a minus 2,000 favorite. Here's a minus 1,000. Like, let's if Bo Nickel is as good as the UFC thinks he is, let's give him some actual competition, okay? He's not going to make it to the rankings if we keep just giving him small step ups every single fight. Let's give this guy an actual fight, an even matchup, somebody who's a dominant wrestler that he can fight. We can see how his striking is because I don't think Bo Nickel looks that good in his last fight at UFC 300. So, I mean, obviously, I am still going to pick him to win this fight, probably by finish, but I just don't understand why we're giving Bo Nickel. I wouldn't call Paul Craig a can. Like it's definitely a step up in competition from where he was fighting at 300, but I don't know. Next up, I've literally never watched a women's fight before. I don't know who either of these people are. I don't care. I'm moving on. I don't know. Actually, let me pick. Let's see. Okay, I'm picking Karine Silva because she has more fights and she's an inch taller and she has a longer reach. So that's literally all I'm basing this off of. I've never heard of either of these people. It's about Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Okay, we've already seen this fight happen, I think 3 or 4 years ago for Charles to win the belt. Amazing fight. I think people are underestimating Michael Chandler in this matchup, okay? Because Charles Oliveira, ever since he went on that long title run, the only people we've seen him lose to is Islam Makhachev and Arman Sarukian. Okay, dominant wrestlers. That's where Charles Oliveira's biggest flaw is. It's wrestlers like Michael Chandler. Let's not talk about the fact, by the way, Michael Chandler has basically been on a 2 year fight camp, just waiting for Conor McGregor to be ready for him to fight. So Michael Chandler's in the best shape of his life right now. He's not just like he's not one of those fighters that just disappear for 2 years and they come back and take a loss because they haven't been like in the gym. This guy's constantly in the gym. I saw the Jesse James West video. Okay, I've seen this guy training, running up those steps. He thinks he's Rocky. Okay, Charles Oliveira. I am gonna pick him to win this fight. I definitely think I could see him submitting Michael Chandler. I mean, he knocked out Michael Chandler. He has underrated striking, but I don't know. I think people are underestimating Michael Chandler in this matchup. I think when Chandler fights at UFC 309, I think this is going to be the best version of Michael Chandler that we see. I think it's definitely going to be a closer fight than it was last time. And let's not forget that Michael Chandler, in their first fight, drops Charles Oliveira in the first round. Dropped him, I think, twice even. He dropped him and he was ground and pounding him until Charles escaped. Remember, he was like grabbing at his legs, kind of like in like a panicking flee for a second, Charles Oliveira was. So I definitely think Michael Chandler has a real possibility to win this fight. I don't think he should be a 2-1 underdog. I think this is a much closer fight than people think, but I am going to pick Charles Oliveira by finish. Moving on, I think my pick for this fight really depends on whether this is a 5 round or a 3 round fight. I'm not sure about that yet. But moving on to John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, this is the worst title fight that we have seen all year. This is worse than Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. This is worse than Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree actually put up a good fight, okay? Like, that was an amazing fight, arguably fight of the year. I saw that in person. It was great to watch. Khalil Roundtree, yes, you could argue that like Magomed Ankalaev deserved it more, and he definitely did. And it's good that he's getting the title shot next at 310. I think that's confirmed. But Khalil Roundtree, at least he had the opportunity to put up a good fight, which he did. Stipe Miocic, this guy's like 45 years old. Like literally, he's 45 years old, I think. Let's look this up. Let's look this up. How old is Stipe? Okay. This guy's 42 years old fighting John Jones, the greatest of all time. And people, the UFC is marketing this as the greatest of all time versus the greatest heavyweight of all time. What this really is a way to give John Jones a retirement fight so that he can avoid Tom Aspinall because the UFC doesn't want their biggest undefeated star to get knocked out cold in the first round by Tom Aspinall, which they know would happen. Okay, I don't understand why we're giving people title shots when they have zero chance of winning the fight. Okay, he's a 5-1 underdog. I don't even think he should be a 5-1 underdog. I think Stipe has zero ways to win this fight. He hasn't fought in 5 or 6 years. Okay, I don't. His last fight was against Francis Ngannou. I think that was in 2021. His last win was against Daniel Cormier. I think that was in 2019 or 2020. So he hasn't won a fight in 5 years. He's been retired. Why is he coming back and getting a title shot? What the UFC should be doing is having John Jones fight Tom Aspinall, and then Stipe could just fight someone like Curtis Blades. And if he wins that matchup, then yeah, give him a title shot. I don't understand why we're having John Jones fight Stipe Miocic in 2024. It's about to be 2025. John Jones should be fighting Tom Aspinall. Everybody knows that he's ducking him. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think John Jones is going to finish Stipe within 2 rounds. Okay, I think it's going to be like a fairly competitive fight the first 2 rounds, and then John Jones is going to take him down and submit him. And I think the crowd's just going to start booing him. And I think he's going to get out there and he's going to be like, all right, Tom Aspinall, where you at? Let's fight. And the crowd's going to start cheering. And then John Jones will just never fight Tom Aspinall. He's just going to keep like hinting on Twitter that he's going to do it. He's going to hold the belt another 2 years, keep holding up the heavyweight division like he's already been doing. It's really hard to defend John Jones when he's doing stuff like this. Tom Aspinall is literally the interim champion. Why are we giving title shots not only to 42-year-olds? Okay, I mean, look, I love Stipe. I'm a big Stipe fan. I'm rooting for him to win this fight. But why are we giving title shots to 42-year-olds when there's an interim belt champion who has an actual chance to beat John Jones? He would be the favorite over John Jones, and yet we're picking Stipe, the 5-1 underdog, 42 years old, in this fight. It doesn't make any sense to me. But that's my reaction to UFC 309, worst card of the year. Some early fight predictions for you guys. Once we get up to fight week, I'm going to put some actual predictions in here for all the fights on the entire card.